Hi, everyone. This is Steve Delisano. Welcome to this week's edition of CEOs You Should Know. I am joined by Dr. Sharon DeVivo, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Vaughn College. Sharon, thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We're so excited to be able to dive into the conversation, learn more about you and more about Vaughn College.
Terrific.
So let's kick off a little bit about yourself. I know you've been with Vaughn College for over 30 years,
Yes.
and you rose to become the first female president. What originally drew you to the college, and what has kept you there for so long?
Yeah, so I really didn't know anything about the programs that we offer when I got there, but came in as the director of communications. And if you're in a communications background, you have to explain a lot of things you don't understand.
Absolutely.
But what's kept me there for this long is the students. They are amazing, mostly from underrepresented backgrounds, primarily from New York City and the surrounding area. Really excited, committed, and passionate about what they want to do. And so it's just a pleasure to serve alongside them.
I love to hear that. That's so important. I know that you grew up as a Navy brat. So how did that really shape your worldview and how you really view leadership, especially in this role?
Yeah, so I was really lucky, in terms of some people would say not so lucky, 17 schools in 12 years.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, 3 colleges, right? A lot of different experiences. I think it made me curious about people and about different kinds of cultures and really interested in learning as much as I could. It also made me very adaptable. If you go to 17 schools in 12 years, you have to be very
Absolutely.
adaptable. And change is coming at us really fast right now. And so that ability to be nimble and flexible and pivot is important for the institution and also important in terms of my own leadership journey.
Yeah, I think curiosity is key to leadership. So I love that answer. And it's probably so interesting to be able to experience all those different institutes and now obviously be
Yeah.
overseeing a college too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody aspires to be a college president, to be honest. You get there because somebody's recognized something in you, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened to me. And then it's just this awesome, amazing opportunity to serve, right? So,
Love that.
nobody gets in those jobs and go, yay, now I'm going to rule the world. It's not what
Love
it's
that.
about.
You've earned degrees from institutions all across the globe, from Munich to Pennsylvania. How has that variety of academic experiences really influenced your vision for Vaughn and the students?
Yeah, so the University of Maryland used to have a campus in Munich, Germany, set up for military dependents. It was on an Army post, and I lived in Army barracks, which was an awesome experience, really small place, about 200 students. And then the flip side of that is where I got my doctoral degree from the University of Pennsylvania, which has thousands and thousands of students. And I think what I learned was that I really love small institutions because I love knowing the impact of the work that I do. When you're at big places, you don't get a sense of the work as
Yeah.
well, especially when you're in administration. And so to be at a small place, and, I know we're going to talk about this more, you really get to know students and their stories. And for me, that's the motivation. That's where I get my energy from.
That's so important.
Yeah.
I know, Sharon, under your leadership, Vaughn has transformed from a training institute to offering advanced degrees in all aviation, engineering, management, technology. What were some of the key steps and decision in really leading this transformation for the school?
Yeah, I mean, it really is about listening to the industries that we serve, right? Because they were the ones that were saying we need more of fill in the blank. Airport managers, air traffic controllers, engineers, right? There are Boeing and Airbus studies that point to the fact that we will not produce enough engineers, pilots, air traffic controllers, maintenance technicians in the next 20 years, right? And so being responsive to what the industries are telling us is how we've just charted this growth path that we've been on for the last several years. And then it's about trusting the people that are the experts in the field, right? So our faculty members who say, yeah, we should take this tack, we should add this program, we should buy this equipment. There's no way that I can be the expert in all those fields.
Yeah.
And so we have an awesome team of faculty members who are many of them come from industry. And so that perspective really assists us in guiding the path forward.
Yeah, that's an awesome characteristic of you as a leader, right? Listening to what's needed and obviously taking that advice and implementing it into real life. So that's awesome. I know that's something that you're proud of is innovation.
Right.
And you've really cultivated innovation in this traditionally structured academic environment, right? How did you do that in both the teaching standpoint as well as the student experience side?
Yeah, so so it's back to some of that is listening again to students in particular who ask for an outstanding and demand, actually, as they should, they're paying, an outstanding educational experience. And then it's about making sure that you know what the innovative things that are out there or thinking about things. I'll give you a good example. During the pandemic, we started to see the initial phases of AI chatbots, right? And I'm not talking about the ones where you go on websites. I'm talking about ones that actually interact with students on a 24/7 basis. And we did that very early because we didn't have anybody on campus, right?
Yeah.
And we know that young people have a tendency to do things off hours, right?
Yep.
And we want to be responsive at 2 a.m. when you want to know when graduation is, right? But we
That's
don't have anybody in
awesome.
the office to answer that question. And the other good thing about this particular AI chatbot is that it looks at students on a bunch of different quadrants: finances, academics, social engagement, and checks in to make sure that they're doing okay. Like maybe you're having trouble with time management, so it'll serve up a video on how to manage time.
That's so cool.
Or budgets, or it'll say, hey, you know what, we're going to connect you with the counselor on campus. They're going to reach out and talk to you. So it helps us in terms of staffing hours, right? It takes care of those sort of easy questions. And at the same time, it provides students with the support that they need to be successful at a time where we might not be available. So that's what we mean about, and we tried it out, and it's been really terrific. So you have to have
great.
this spirit of experimentation
100%.
if you want to get to innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
We touched on this a little bit earlier, but can you share how Vaughn's unique culture, being a highly diverse first generation student population, really has also influenced that approach to leadership and some of the priorities you have for the institution?
yeah, absolutely. So, and you could see the big grin because I just love, I just love what we serve. And, there's a reason that we're the best institution in the nation, the region, and New York City in moving students from the bottom percentages of income to the top. That's not just about Vaughn. That's also about the industries that we serve, which include aviation, engineering, technology, management degrees. It also speaks to the incredible demand that is out there right now for our graduates. But I'd also like to think it has something to do with the educational experience that we are deeply invested in as an institution. And so it's really why we come to work. It's why we do what we do. And to know that you've helped a student, I'm thinking of Mathen, who, first semester, family had a massive fire in their apartment building, and Mathen sustained burns over 15% of his body. We reached out, provided a gift card for Stop and Shop, tried to help him with his coursework.
That's amazing.
He was just the commencement speaker in May.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And has just started a job at GE in Atlanta as a field engineer, right? To know that story and to know the impact that we've been able to have on Mathen and his family and their trajectory, and his brother's still on campus, which is great, is just incredible. Right?
That's awesome. And I'm sure very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can tell that you have that passion and that love for what you do as you tell these stories. And leading into that, I think that's probably one of the reasons that Vaughn's vision is to change the world one student at a time, right? So what does that look like in action? Obviously, you just told one great story, but how do you really measure that success and achieving that mission across the entire student body?
Yeah, so there's you can look at outcomes, you can look at persistence along the way. In fact, we just did our annual look back to see how graduates are doing in terms of employment. So we survey you when you graduate, but then we survey you a year out to see, are you employed? Are you working in your field? And the numbers, breaking news, the numbers just came out 2 days ago. 99% of our graduates are employed or continuing their education within 1 year, 78% in their field, right? And it's about making sure from almost the moment, even the moments before you come to campus as a registered student. So new student orientation, making sure that you're getting all the supports, know who the people are that you need to reach out to, encouraging you not to wait until there's a real problem. Making sure you take the first year experience course, which makes sure you're engaged, you have support services. If you're having, our biggest barrier is affordability and finances. Making sure you've got the supports, connections to Scholarship Universe, which will connect you to scholarships, that you know how to get emergency assistance, that you know how to take advantage of our food pantry, right? Those kinds of things. And then in your sophomore year, taking our CD Career Development CD 101 course so that you've got a good LinkedIn profile, that you've got a good resume, that you know how to interview, that you're using our tools on campus for even part-time or internships. And then making sure by the time you get to your capstone project, which is sort of your graduation project, that you've got team building skills, public speaking skills, all the critical thinking, analytical communication skills that you're going to need to be successful in that job. And then providing you with lifelong placement services, right? Let's say 2 years, after you've gotten into the industry, you're like, I think I want to, try something else, right?
Pivot.
You can come back to us and we'll work with you. We often have employers who come back to us because of our specialties and say, can you reach out to your alums and see if they'd be interested in this sort of higher level job that requires experience? And then it's about staying engaged with those students, right, after the fact and finding out what those stories are. We've done issues of our Vaughn magazine that looks at 20 in their 20s and, sort of tracking everybody's path. We've been around since 1932, so we have some older graduates as well.
That's great.
But really staying engaged with those young alums and those ones that are in their first decade of work is really important.
Yeah, it's awesome to see that you have so many support and resources, not just for the student body, but really forever, right?
Yeah.
Forever, they'll always be part of Vaughn and always have the support and resources that you guys provide.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. I know that you've earned top national rankings in economic and social mobility. What strategies or implementations did you put in place that were the most critical to achieving those outcomes?
Yeah, so aviation, engineering, technology fields don't have great awareness in underrepresented and under-resourced communities, right? People tend to think of aviation as like pilots and flight attendants, right? And just about any job you can think of, you can do in aviation. So a lot of the work that we have to do is about creating awareness early, not high school. That's too late. Actually, it's about middle school now.
Wow.
Soon we're going to chip kindergartners, I think. But it's about having those engagement activities with them at a pretty early age, so that there's awareness in their families, right? So air traffic control is a great example of this, although it's been getting a lot of press because of some of the difficulties right now. But I don't think folks necessarily understand what that job means, what it is, how well it pays. Right? The average air traffic controller on Long Island makes $350,000.
Wow.
And there are Vaughn graduates. 30% of the JFK Tower is Vaughn graduates. The supervisor at Westchester County Airport's a Vaughn graduate. LaGuardia Airport, Vaughn graduates, right? So, but you need to see it to be it.
Yeah.
Right? And so using our own students, our own alums to go back into communities where they can show off, right? And really say, hey, this is really possible. Yep. And we also need girls not to give up, right? So all of this is part of what we do in terms of outreach to Girl Scouts or local public schools or doing drone projects in Brooklyn and Queens high schools and Long Island high schools. It's really about showing students and families what the pathways look like.
I think that's so important, just to be able to inspire those young young individuals that they could see someone like themselves in those roles and in those professions. It gives them that motivation that could be them someday.
Yeah, you got to see it to be it.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned this earlier, but I know that the college is nearly approaching its 100th year anniversary.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you plan to continue to have Vaughn as that leader in aviation and engineering education for the next century?
Yeah, this is kind of back to where we started, right? It really is about making sure that we're listening to industry. And I don't just mean that in sort of I happen to talk to a CEO and say, hey, what do you need, right? This is about having very structured approaches, but also some informal approaches too. So whether it's making sure that we have advisory councils for each of our major areas, so engineering and engineering technology, we have an aviation advisory council, we have a management advisory council, and really listening to them about what they're telling us. I'll give you a good for instance. So our airport management, airline management, general management programs right now have a foreign language component because when we built those programs 20 years ago, the local airport advisors said to us, make sure they know how to speak another language. Probably not as critical anymore. What they're now telling us is make those courses AI courses, right? Because we're using AI in managing our airports, right? We manage how quick we can turn a plane because the more planes you can get into a gate, the more money the airport makes, right? So being able to analyze data, write a good prompt, right? These are all skill sets that students are going to need in the future.
That's so interesting to see like the evolution of that.
Yeah.
While there's a lot of positive, I'm sure there also could be challenges along the ways.
Right.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced as a higher education institute?
Yeah. So pandemic was really tough for the institution.
sure.
Our average family income is about 42,000, and students had to choose between rent and tuition, and rent won as it should,
Yep.
right? So, and much like after 9/11, we see this sort of tick down in enrollment as the industry is trying to recuperate, and then you
Yep.
get this literally a hockey stick of recovery, and we're in the hockey stick right now,
Nice.
which
That's
is
good to
great.
hear.
Yeah, about 40% growth in enrollment in 2 years. Yeah, so in those situations, you just have to work really hard to keep your faculty, staff, and students informed. Right after the pandemic started, at that point, we had roughly 1,500 students, called every one of them. How are you doing? What do you need? Loaner laptops, emergency assistance. We wanted to make sure that students understood we were there to help them.
That's great.
And that theme really continues as we have moved out of the pandemic and into this really unbelievable demand. I mean, in my 30 years at the institution, I've never seen demand like we're seeing right now.
That's awesome.
And it's because more of us are flying, more of us, are using technology in our everyday lives. These are great pathways. And we shouldn't be afraid of AI. That's
Yep.
the other thing, right? You have to be an expert
Embrace
in
it.
your field,
Yeah.
right? It's an assist. It's not
Mhm.
taking over. So giving students those skills is what's really important.
That's great to hear. We touched on this a little bit earlier about getting more women into
Yeah.
the industry.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to any young women that are aspiring to leadership roles, higher
Yeah.
education, or really STEM industries?
Yeah. So we know from the research that girls tend to be even ahead
Mhm.
until about 8th grade. And then when they get into high school, they sort of back off, right?
Okay.
And I think some of that is there's not enough role models of women in the fields, right? Particularly around STEM, is they kind of get this idea that it's not for them. They're not welcome, right? And so some of this is on industry to make sure that they're fostering a sense of belonging, right? Making sure that you've got work family policies and practices to hold on to those women when they decide or not how they're going to manage their lives. But really, it's about talking to girls in middle school. It is, if you're waiting till high school, they've already made up their mind. And we have to be active and approachable about what our pathway looked like, what some of the struggles have looked like. There are still struggles as a woman, and particularly in underrepresented fields, and how you manage that and how you have a tribe of people around you
Yeah.
to talk to and think things through, and so that you can stay the course and be incredibly successful. Because we know those companies that are more diverse, whether that's gender, race, religion, any kind of different lived experience, is an awesome contributor to companies. And we also know from the research that it makes them more successful. And so we need to find as many ways as we can to help keep girls on that path.
I love that. Couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
So, what is next for Vaughn College? Do you have any exciting developments or expansions on the horizon?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is we talked a little bit about air traffic control. The FAA has now moved so the pathway used to be you could go to an institution like Vaughn, or you could reply to what's called a general public announcement. And if you got accepted, got a recommendation from us, you would go to the FAA Academy in Oklahoma City. Because of the pandemic and because of the mandatory retirement age of 56, are in desperate need of about 4,000 air traffic controllers.
Wow.
The Academy can't handle all of that, so they have opened it up. I think there's a half dozen institutions across the country right now, including Vaughn, that offer what's called an enhanced air traffic control training program, which means you don't have to go to Oklahoma at all. You can stay in New York and do all of your training here. So that's an awesome opportunity for students to become air traffic controllers. The mandatory retirement age is 56, by the way, so you have to get in it by the time you're 31. We also offer what's called a contract tower option, slightly different, and allows folks up to 35 to get into contract towers. So just a terrific opportunity. The other place that's really going to be interesting is, air taxis, which are coming to New York, I think, next year.
Wow.
So this whole idea of taking an air taxi from Manhattan to JFK or from Manhattan to Newark, right? Being part of, the folks who maintain those, fly those, manage what's going to be called a vertical airport, vertiport, design the batteries, those kinds of things. And another really cool piece about technology is this, use of virtual reality with lab assignments. So we used to joke that we would have loved to have sent our students home with an engine during the pandemic. Virtual reality is good enough now that you basically can do that.
That's so cool.
And so students are going to see more and more technology in these spaces that really help supplement the skills that we're teaching them in the classroom.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see that happen.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of the amazing work that Vaughn College is doing. But for our listeners, if there's one thing you want them to take away about the mission, about the school, what would that be?
Yeah, that Vaughn College really cares about students, right? We really do. We don't just say it. We prove it with things like food pantries and emergency assistance. And probably one of the biggest ways is, because we're a small institution, sometimes it can be tough to get big companies, especially manufacturers that are not in this area, to come to Vaughn. And so we are very good about supporting students to go off to the National Society of Black Engineers, Women in Aviation Society, Women Engineers, the Hispanic Society of Professional Engineers, right? All of these places have Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Airbus, and this is where students get internships and jobs. That's why our placement rate is so high. And we know our students don't always have the resources. So investing in them all across their degree programs and making that commitment in a very real way is how we help transform their lives and their families' lives.
That's awesome. Well, I think that mission and that commitment definitely shine through our conversation today.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Is there any last call to action you'd like to share? If someone that is tuning in wants to engage or learn more about Vaughn College, what should they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Please visit our website, so www.vaughn.edu, or please connect with me on LinkedIn, Sharon DeVivo.
Awesome. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for coming in today, for sharing your story, for telling us all more about Vaughn College. It is very inspiring. It is amazing work that you guys are doing at the college, and you could tell that you love what you do. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next week for next week's edition of CEOs You Should Know.